Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm diving into another set of acrylic markers, this time from Woomer. Now, if you've been watching my videos lately, you might be wondering why all the acrylic markers, Irena? Well, it's simple. I only recently discovered how fun and versatile they are for mixed media colorings, and honestly, I got hooked. Before, I only had smaller sets, and while they were nice, I often felt like something was missing, especially deeper, darker shades. So I mostly use them for covering line art or doing light pastel and botanical pieces that match the vibe. But then Woomer reached out and asked me if I'd like to try their huge set of 120 acrylic markers. And of course I said yes, who wouldn't want to see what kind of magic you can create with that many colors. If you've never used acrylic markers before, this could be a fun and affordable way to start experimenting. So let's check them out together and see how they perform. The markers come neatly packed in a plastic box with 10 separate compartments. You need to unclip each one, and once you figure out the best way to open them, it's actually super easy and efficient. As I was opening the box and lifting out the trays, I was honestly quite happy with how everything was organized. The colors were sorted so nicely that I immediately felt like, okay, no need to rearrange anything here. I couldn't wait to make a color swatch and see what I'm working with, especially to check if there were enough dark shades to play with. Now, as for the colors, they looked gorgeous right out of the box. Lots of light tones that are perfect for layering and covering, and finally some deeper shades that looked really promising. They definitely have that classic pastel feel that acrylic markers are known for, but they also seemed unusually vibrant, which I loved. I immediately swatched the colors, and it felt really nice in the hand, smooth and satisfying. I noticed a nice variety of blues and greens, a bit less when it comes to browns, though there were quite a few yellows and beige tones. Also, the paint didn't dry instantly, which I love. It means I can use it in a way I like, softening the marker lines with a bit of water and a brush to create smoother transitions. Totally doable with these. The instructions say you should shake the markers before using them. Of course, remember to put the cap back on after use, but there's also a note that they should be stored horizontally. I did shake them a little more often than necessary just in case. Honestly, the paint flowed really nicely even without that, but a few markers needed a bit of extra help to get going smoothly, so I figured better safe than sorry, especially since they were all brand new and hadn't been used before. All of them were great though. I got a really nice response while swatching. It was super easy to fill in small areas, and somehow it just made me even more excited to actually start painting with them. For this demo, I'm going to color a page from the Precious Planet coloring book. I figured the best way to really test out these markers is to throw them into something bold and colorful, and what's more colorful than parrots? I want to use only the markers for this piece so I can really explore what they can do. No pencils or extras this time, just pure marker play. I think I started off with some pretty dark shades, but the great thing about acrylic markers is that you can layer light colors on top of dark ones without a problem. From my past experience, I know it's better not to overdo the layering too much. just in case I decide to add some colored pencils details later, but so far it's working really well. The paint stays wet just long enough for me to soften the lines with a bit of water and a brush, which is exactly how I like to use them. It gives such a nice painterly effect. I've never been too obsessed with making everything perfectly blended. I actually like when a few brush strokes peek through. But of course, that depends on your style and how you like to color. Sometimes I feel like a bit of a color maniac because I switch shades so quickly. But for me, those quick color changes help me build up the effect I want. I don't really stay in one spot to blend everything out. Instead, I bounce around the page, adjusting things as I go. That way I can better follow what the picture needs and how I can push the colors to look even better. Now, just a quick note, I won't be listing the exact marker numbers or colors I'm using like many colorists do. This is more of a demo where I want to show how acrylic markers behave and what you can do with them. Before I started coloring, I actually looked up some real-life references of these parrots, something I always do. I like to take a few minutes before coloring to check what the subject looks like in nature, maybe download a few images for guidance or inspiration. It helps me decide on the color direction and gives me some useful visual cues. From what I read, the male parrots tend to have more vibrant and contrasting feathers, bright colors, flashy wings, while the females usually have a more brownish-green palette with softer blues and reds that are way more muted. When I checked Google Images, the blue and yellow males definitely stood out the most, so that's where I decided to start. I'm not aiming for realism or anything, but I do want the picture to feel alive. And for that, I need a good sense of value, meaning some nice contrast between the darker turquoise and the light yellow areas. Also, I'm going to take a little creative risk here. Instead of using natural yellowish browns for the other parrot, I might go with purples and pinks, just because the colors in this set are so beautiful and I really want to play with them and see what they can do. As I paint, I try to keep a bit of three-dimensionality in mind. I am not going for anything super realistic, but I do like to give the artwork a bit of depth. So I usually place darker, cooler tones in the background and then use lighter, warmer shades on parts that are more forward, like the wings or anything that's popping out a bit. Since the parrots are in the foreground and I started with them first, everything else, like the little flowers, the leaves, and the background, will kind of follow their color palette. I like to adjust things around them to make sure the parrots remain the main focus and that the colors all work together nicely. Now I'm going to try painting the female parrot with a bit more vibrant and warmer tones than I used on the male, so I'm thinking pink and yellow. Let's see how that turns out. These soft pastel colors are definitely outside of my comfort zone, especially using both pink and yellow together. It's not my usual combo. I can already tell that I probably won't risk using any bold dark tones for the background with these markers, so the whole piece will end up looking a lot softer than my usual high contrast style. And honestly, even though I do go through phases while painting where I think maybe this won't look great, I'm still really enjoying the process. These markers are super easy to use, they feel great in the hand, and they're actually just a lot of fun to work with. To wrap up everything I've learned so far about these liquid ink acrylic markers. At first, the plastic case seemed a bit harder to use. I had to spread out all 10 trays across my desk and was a bit nervous I might break something, but once I actually started painting, I realized it's quite practical in a different way. Especially when choosing colors. Everything is neatly organized and I could easily find what I needed. The side view of the case shows which compartment holds which color group, so you just unlock the one you need, which is really handy. The markers themselves are easy and comfortable to use. They work well even on thinner paper, as long as you don't overdo it with water or layering. You'll see later when I turn my coloring book page to the other side that I added a bit too much water in some spots by accident, but under normal use there's no bleeding through the page or buckling, so they're definitely suitable for coloring books. One thing I did notice, and that matters to me when it comes to acrylic markers in the books, is that the liquid ink ones are slightly more transparent, so at first they don't cover the black lines in a coloring book completely. However, if you go over the same area a couple of times, especially using the brush tip with a bit more pressure, they do eventually neutralize the lines. Still, if you're looking for full opacity right away to cover the black lines, like some other acrylic markers offer, this is something to keep in mind. Also, the key in the coloring books is to let each layer dry before applying the next one, just like with watercolor. Don't layer wet on wet unless you're working on thicker paper. But when the paper can handle it, layering works beautifully. As for the colors, there's a fantastic selection in this set. The brush tip is great for details and the colors are vibrant and smooth. They blend well with layering and you get a nice mix of muted tones and brighter ones. I was able to create soft, dreamy effects like the misty flowers and leaves in the background of the parrots. And in this large set, there are also enough dark tones to give you good value and contrast if you're working only with markers. Once again, Woomer has surprised me in a good way. I've used their colored pencils and watercolors before, both budget-friendly and very usable, and I still use them in the books and especially for journaling. These markers are described as suitable for both kids and adults doing DIY projects, and honestly, they're perfect for practice, journaling, and coloring books. I have no complaints about their performance, and acrylic markers work on wood, stone, and glass, which opens up a lot of creative possibilities. I've made 2 or 3 artworks with them so far, so I can't speak to how long they will last, but I'll update you in the future because you'll definitely see me using them again. If you enjoy mixed media or are a beginner looking for an easy way to get into acrylic painting, this is a great set. They do have smaller sets too, so if you don't need 120 colors, that's worth checking out. Just keep in mind that the markers aren't sold individually, so take a look at the color charts to see which set fits your needs best. These aren't the cheapest acrylic markers I've seen, especially for a set of 120, but I honestly think they're a good value for what they offer. Between filming the coloring book page, I also tried the markers on a few small landscape cards and in my sketchbook. I used hot-pressed watercolor paper because I plan to soften some areas with water. I have to say I'll definitely use these markers again for small sketches and journaling. The markers work well on paper that's not overly thick, and they glide really nicely on smoother paper compared to textured ones, especially when you're using water. I hope I was able to show you what these markers can do in a coloring book. I enjoyed using them and I hope that comes through in my artworks and coloring. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you again soon.